This conference will now be recorded.
Okay. So in the last session, we have discussed about the web services and the various principles has to be get followed by each web service, and what are the various types of web services are available in Salesforce, and what exactly the REST-based web service, what exactly the SOAP-based web service. Okay, now. So now whenever we are implementing the web services, typically you will be having two components. One is a provider, second one is consumer. Okay, as part of web services, you will be having the two components. One is the provider, second one is the consumer. Provider means like as a server, which will be having the actual business logic, data, functionalities will be getting available, which is going to be providing the resources to that various clients. So when coming to the consumer, consumer is nothing but a client which is going to be connecting to the provider, and they're collecting the required resources. They're accessing the required resources. Okay, like as a client and the server. That client is nothing but the consumer, which will be consuming the services. Consumer is nothing but accessing the resources which are available at the provider's place. So whatever the resources are available, whatever the web services are available at the provider's place, that can be consumed by the consumer or the client. So now in this case, how can we prepare our own web services as part of Salesforce instance? Okay, now let's see practically. So now whenever we are preparing the REST-based web services, whenever we are preparing that REST-based web services, because almost 99% of the people are going to be implementing that REST-based web services, because these can be very easy to access. These can be accessible by any client. That client may be a desktop application, or it may be a web application, it may be a cloud, it may be a mobile applications also. Okay, so most of the mobile applications are utilizing the REST-based web services. Okay, so now in this case, so parsing the data in the REST-based web service is very easy when compared with that the SOAP-based, because SOAP-based in the sense we have to use purely the XML format. But when you go to the REST-based web services, these are going to be exposing the data to you in the form of either JSON format or XML or text. Whatever the way that you want, we can able to expose. So now JSON is very lightweight. Okay, JSON is a very lightweight programming which is used to parse the data very easily. To synchronize, to because to serialize the data and to deserialize the data by using JSON, we are having so many ready-made classes and the methods are available. It is very easy to parse that information, so that you can go with any web service, whatever we have. Okay, most of the web services are purely built upon REST-based implementations, so that parsing that response or passing the input also very easy when compared with that XML format. Okay, now, so in this case, how can we prepare our own REST-based web services? Whenever we are going to preparing the REST-based web services that already we have discussed, in REST-based web services, each and every class or each and every object will be referred as a resource. Okay, everything will be a resource. Whatever the features you are accessing, each and every feature will be referred as a resource. The resource can be accessible with the help of an URI. Okay, the resource can be accessible with the help of an URI. where we need to specify the name of the resource. Based on the resource name, we can able to get that resource, which is available at the provider's place. So in this case, how can we build our own REST-based web services in Salesforce? Whenever if you want to prepare the REST-based web services, we have to use the various annotations. We have to use various annotations. Now we'll see what are the various annotations are available inside the REST-based web services. Now, for example, implementing REST-based web services are very, very simple. It's not typical, it's very, very simple. Now, for example, assume that here. Assume that I'm preparing a normal class. I'm preparing a normal class. Public class, the class name, like as some accounts helper. Inside this class, I'm writing some business logic. So now tell me, in this class can be accessible up to what level? Within that entire organization, because I made this class as public, so public classes can be accessible within the entire organization wherever you want. Now sometimes I am defining this class as global. What do you mean by the global? Outside the organization also. Who can access this one? Salesforce resources, not the third-party applications. Third-party applications can't access this class, because you can raise a question, sir, you have made it as global, so that this can be accessible from outside of the organization. But even though outside of the organization, only Salesforce resources can access that, like as Salesforce queues, batch classes. These are the various things can be accessible here. But the third-party applications can't access your class. If you want to make your class to be get accessible from a third-party application also, at that time we have to use an annotation called as REST resource. REST resource. That's it. Nothing else. Over. It's a web service which can be consumed by the third-party applications. Now, in this case, that already we have discussed, whatever the things if you want to access, there from the third-party application, everything will be nothing but a resource. How can we access that resource? Based on the resource name. What is the name of this resource? For this one, we can specify the name over here. For that one, we are using a property called as URL mapping. URL mapping. Here we can specify that resource name. I'm giving that resource name as accounts service / star. That's it. So now whenever if you want to access this class, no need to use this class name, use the resource name. What is the resource name? This is the resource name which I have specified, accounts service. The people just know the service name, that's it. But internally, what is that class? The people doesn't know, because we are not disclosing that, because that is confidential. I don't want to disclose my actual class name. Just I'm giving that the resource name, that's it. Just I'm giving the resource name. So based on the resource name, the consumer can able to consume your service also. The consumer can consume that service just based on that resource name itself here. Now, in this case, whenever if you want to prepare any web service, then just you have to use a global class. That global class we are going to be exposing to the third-party web services, third-party applications with the help of an annotation called as @REST resource. This is a resource. This is nothing but a class. This is having some business logic which is going to be exposing some data also to you. So now we can access this resource with the help of a name called as accounts service. So now we are going to be writing some business logic inside that classes over here. So that whenever we are going to be implementing the REST-based web services, we have to use some annotations. We have to use that annotations @REST resource, which is used to make that class as a service which can be consumed by any third-party applications. If I'm not providing this particular REST resource annotation, this class can be accessible outside of the organization also, but that can be accessible by only that Salesforce resources, not the third-party applications. If you want to make this class can be accessible by the third-party application, then we have to specify that @REST resource. Okay, so this is the REST resource. This is one of that web service which we have implemented, which is a REST-based web service, which can be consumed by the third-party application. Whatever the data it is going to return, whatever the results it is going to be returning to you, we can able to get that result in the form of either JSON format or XML or the text-based also, whatever you want. Depends upon your application requirement, we can able to get that response in the required format, either in JSON format or XML format or text-based format also we can get. For that one, we are going to be using that annotation called as @REST resource. Now, along with that, what are the various other annotations are available as part of this REST Apex or the Apex REST implementation? Now, let's see practically one by one. Okay, now. So now tell me, is it preparing this global class is easy or difficult to you? Easy. You know, okay, since almost 2 months keep on, we are preparing so many classes here. Okay, as of now, we have used those classes within the organization, but now we are preparing a class with some set of business logic, which can be consumed by a third-party application. That's it. I'm preparing a web service. That web service I'm going to be exposing to that outside the world, which can be consumed by any third-party application over there. Okay, so now for that one here we are implementing that REST-based implementations by using that annotation called as @REST resource. Okay, now, so now make a note of this one here. Now, before that, specify this. Now, each web service contains two components. First one is a provider, that is also called as server. It contains a set of business logic which can be exposed to the third-party applications. Third-party applications which can be exposed to the third-party applications. Second one is the consumer, nothing but the client. Now, it is an application which will consume the services offered by the provider. Okay, it is an application which will consume the services offered by the provider. So a consumer can consume multiple web services also, not only one, multiple web services also. Okay, a consumer can consume multiple web services also in one shot. The possibility is available. Now, a consumer can access the multiple services from the different providers. A consumer can access the multiple services or resources from the different providers. Okay, so when coming to the provider is going to be offering some services or resources to that third-party applications. That third-party application is called as a consumer, which will be consuming your service, which will be accessing your service in order to achieve some functionalities inside that organization. Now, so now whenever we are going to be preparing that REST-based implementations, okay, now let's see. In REST, each functionality will be referred as a resource. Each functionality will be referred as a resource. You can access the resources by using the resource name, okay, resource name with the help of an URI. With the help of an URI. That is also called as endpoint. That is also called as endpoint. By using a protocol. By using a protocol. REST is purely implemented based on the HTTP protocol and by adding some set of principles on top of HTTP protocol. REST-based web services can provide the result, can provide the data in the form of either JSON format or XML format or text format. REST-based web services can provide the data in the form of either JSON or XML or text-based format. Upon creating the REST web services or REST services or REST-based web services, we have to use the below annotations. We have to use the below annotations. First one, @REST resource. Second one, @HTTP get. Third one, @HTTP post. Fourth one, @HTTP put. Fifth one, @HTTP patch. Sixth one, @HTTP delete. So these are the various annotations are available. Okay. So this is a common question. Okay, whenever you are implementing your own web services like a REST-based web services, so what are the various annotations are available? As part of REST, we are having the 6 annotations. One is @REST resource, and then @HTTP get, HTTP post, HTTP put, HTTP patch, HTTP delete. These are the various annotations are available. Now we will see each and every annotation and how can we prepare our service, how can we expose, how can we test it also by using that workbench tool. In order to test that REST-based web services or the SOAP-based web services, we have so many tools are available here. Like we can able to use that multiple tools, like well, we can able to use that workbench. That is also one of that free tool, or else you can use Postman. Postman is also one of the third-party tool which is used to test your web services. We are having SOAP UI, that is also a third-party tool, and we can use some the HP QTP. Okay, from the HP, we are having a QTP tool is available. Through the tool also we can able to test. Like that, multiple tools are available. Okay, in our IT industry, in our the internet, which we can able to use those testing those tools also. But as part of Salesforce, the most useful and the most commonly using tool is like as Workbench. Workbench is a very easy to use tool. So directly we can connect from Workbench to your Salesforce, and we can able to test those the REST-based web services also. We can perform all these operations whatever you want. Okay. Now, so now let's see each and every annotation one by one. How to use this annotation? How to perform those operations? We'll see. Okay. Now, the first one at the rate REST resource. Okay. Now, whenever if you want to prepare any web service, okay, whenever if you want to prepare any web service, simply service in the sense a class, a blind thumb rule. Service in the sense a class. Then why they have given the name as service? Because that will be accessing by some other third-party applications. Okay, like for example, we are using that mobile network. Mobile network is what? A service. Why? That mobile network is not only utilizing by that mobile network people. Okay, that will be utilizing by the common customers. So many partners are utilizing that. Banking people are offering what? Services. Why? Those are not only utilizing by the bank employees. So many customers are utilizing that. That means it's a service. Like the similar way, I'm preparing a class. Okay, that class I want to make it available to all the other users. That means all the third-party applications can able to access that. For that one, I'm referring it as a service. So this is a class which is having some business logic, but as of now, I'm using that class by my own. Within my application only, I'm utilizing that. But this business logic required for the other customers also, for the other applications also. So now I'm making this class as a service which can be consumed by the other consumers or the clients or other the third-party applications also. Those clients are nothing but the third-party applications. Okay, other applications. Other applications can consume my service. They can access my service also. Okay, so in this case, we are going to making it as a resource or a service. Now, whenever if you want to prepare any web service, okay, whenever if you want to prepare any web service, we have to prepare a class which can be accessible by the third-party applications based on the resource name. Okay, based on the resource name, they can able to access that. Okay, now, so let's make a note of this one. REST resource. This annotation is used to expose. Annotation is used to expose a class to the third-party applications. Third-party application, which contains a set of business logic inside it. A set of business logic methods inside it. This annotation is used to expose a class to the third-party applications, which contains a set of business logic methods inside it. Now make a note. Always, the REST class should be defined with a global access specifier. Global access specifier. And on top of the class, we have to specify the REST resource. On top of the class, we have to specify the REST resource annotation. On top of the class, we have to specify the REST resource annotation in order to make this service can be accessible by the third-party application. So now if anybody asks from the entry point of view, okay, have you prepared any REST-based services or not? Say yes. How to prepare a REST-based web service by using the various annotations. Okay, so now to prepare that class and then to make that class as a REST-based service, we are going to be using an annotation called as @REST resource. Okay, @REST resource. Now, in this case, whenever I'm going to be using the REST resource here, we need to specify the resource name. Then what is the syntax of this one? Now let me explain over here. Syntax. @REST resource. Here we can specify URL mapping. URL mapping. That means here, based on what URL the third-party people can consume your service. Okay, based on what URL the third-party people can consume the service. What is your service name? We can indicate that service name over here. For that one, I'm indicating slash. We can give any of that resource name. Resource name slash star. This can be accessible by any third-party application. Okay, star in the case, all the applications can access this particular resource. Now, here we can specify that global class name. Here we can write the business logic. Okay, so this is a resource name. Based on that resource name only, the third-party applications can access your resource. For example, @REST resource, I'm indicating URL mapping slash case manager service. In order to expose all the case related information, I'm preparing a class. That class I'm going to be exposing to the third party with the help of a resource name called as case manager service. Here we can specify that global class case manager. Here we can write the business logic. We can write the business logic. That's it. So in order to make that class as a web service, REST-based web service, we are using that annotation called as @REST resource annotation. That means it is going to be indicating, so this is a class which can be accessible by the third-party application, okay, over the URI, where we have to use that resource name as this is the resource name. This is the resource name through which we can able to access that REST resources. Okay, clear? Understood this one up to this one? Next one. The second annotation, HTTP get, post, put, patch, delete. Now let's see. So each and every annotation one by one. Now this REST resource is the only annotation which can be applicable on the class level. Okay, class level. These remaining annotations we can able to apply on the method level. Okay, these can be applicable on method level here. Okay. So now because through that method, what kind of operations were performed? Either you are retrieving the data, or inserting some records, updating some records, deleting some records, performing both update and insert operations. Depends upon the operation which you are performing inside that method. Okay, we have to use that respective annotation over here. Okay, through that method, if you are simply getting the data, then we can able to make that method can be accessible with the help of @HTTP get annotation. That means now whenever we are going to be accessing that resource, okay, whenever you are accessing that resource, depends upon the operation which you are going to perform, we have to specify that method name, either get method or post or put or patch or delete. Okay, these are the various methods are available as part of HTTP protocol. Okay, as part of HTTP protocol, these are the various methods are available. These methods we can able to accessible with the help of this @HTTP get and the @HTTP post and the annotations. Okay, now. So now here in this case, how can we implement this one? Now let's see. @HTTP get annotation. Okay, now. So in this case, what is the use of HTTP get? So now this annotation is going to be indicating that this is the method which is used to get some resources from that provider to consumer here. Okay, in order to send some data, in order to get some data from the provider to consumer, to get only the data, not to insert, not to update, not to delete. Just if you want to get some resources information, then we have to use that annotation called as @HTTP get annotation. Okay, @HTTP get annotation is used to get the resources information from the provider to consumer. Okay, now make a note over here. This annotation allows us to get the resources information or data from the provider to consumer, from the provider to consumer. In order to get the resource, in order to get the data, we are using HTTP get annotation simply. This can be applicable on the method level. This can be applicable on the method level. Note, all the web service methods should be static. Okay, all the web service methods should be static. Okay, all the web service methods should be static. So whatever the methods you are going to be defining inside that global class, those should be always, all the methods are static and global. Okay, because you know that because these methods we are accessing from outside, from the third-party application. For that one, these methods should be global and static. And it may be returning some values also. Return type may not be wide. Return type, it may be anything, whatever you want. We can return that values. Okay. Now, in this case here, how can we use this @HTTP get annotation? Now, let me explain practically here. For example, in this case, I'm giving the syntax. @HTTP get. Here we can specify global, static, return type, method name. Okay, method name. We can able to write the business logic. Okay, write the business logic inside this. Global, static, return type. We can specify the return type either wide also, either string also. It may be integer also, collections also. Any type it will be returning that. And then we can specify the method name, and then we can write the business logic inside this. Clear? Now, so in this case, whenever if you want to get some data, then we have to use an annotation called as @HTTP get annotation. But there is a limitation that a web service class can have only one @HTTP get annotated method, not multiple. Okay, a web service can have only one @HTTP get annotated method, not multiple. Suppose, for example, here, come to a scenario. Assume that I'm preparing a class. For example, I'm preparing a web service. In this web service, I'm writing some method. I want to get some records. So in this case, I'm indicating global, static, list of case. Okay, list of case records I want to collect. Get all cases. Here I'm writing some business logic here. Here I'm writing some business logic. Now here what this method will do, this method is going to be collecting all the case records available inside my case object. It is returning all the case records in the form of a list collection. So that means what, it is returning the data to you. It is just we are going to be collecting the data from the consumer side. So we have to make it as @HTTP get. Okay. So now in this case, we are going to be accessing this particular resource based on this name by using the method called as get method. Okay, with the help of the get method, we can able to get this resource. Whenever I'm going to be using the method as get, it is going to be invoking this method automatically. This method is going to be returning the resource data to you. Okay. For example, here, if you want to get only one case record over here, for example, global static, simply a case, get case record by ID. Here I'm writing the business logic. Write the business logic. Here also I'm going to be getting only one record. Here by using this method I'm collecting multiple cases, but here I'm collecting only one case record here. So at that time here I'm specifying that HTTP get. But in this case here, both cannot be acceptable. Because whenever we are going to be accessing the resources, just by using the resource name only we are accessing. So we are not specifying any method name. Okay, we are not specifying any method name. Just we have to specify that method either get or post or put or patch or delete. These are the HTTP methods we are using. We are not using the actual methods over here. Suppose if I am using the get method, then what get method it will call? Either this one or either this one. It will be a conflict. So that inside a class, inside a web service, we can have only one HTTP get annotated method. Like the similar way, the same also. Whenever you are implementing that post also, put also, patch also, delete also, only one annotated method should be available over here, not multiple. Okay, inside a web service, only one @HTTP get annotated method will be available. Only one @HTTP post annotated method will be available. Like the similar way for the remaining annotations also. We can't define two methods with the same annotation here. Okay, we can't define two methods with the same annotation, because if you're calling based on that method name like as get all cases and get case records by ID, as of now how we are accessing based on that method name directly over here. Here we know that method name, but the third party people doesn't know what methods I have created internally here. Okay, what methods they have created internally, they don't know. I don't want to expose that information also. I don't want to disclose that information. I want to make it hide. Just I'm giving one name. Okay, just I'm giving a name that is called as resource name. Just based on the resource name only they can access that. But internally, this resource is for which class, which methods we are accessing. They should not be aware of that here. They no need to aware of that. Just they are going to be accessing the resource by using resource name. They have to invoke that method by using either get or put or post or patch or delete, whatever. That's it. But they no need to aware of the method names over here, whatever we have implemented inside this service. Okay, clear? So whenever you are creating that, the two methods with the same annotation will be giving that compilation error. Okay, understood the concept here? Then different services you can create. Now, make a note. We can't have or we can't create multiple methods with the same annotation. That is, a web service class can have only one @HTTP get annotated method. A web service can have only one @HTTP get annotated method, not multiple. Because the people are going to be accessing my resource based on the resource name and then HTTP method. That's it. They don't know what class I have created, what is the name of the class, what is the name of the method, what business logic I have written. Nobody can know that here. Nobody doesn't know that information. Simply they have given a resource name. Based on the resource name only we can able to implement. Okay, clear? Now then how can we access this resource over here? Okay, accessing the resource. Okay, accessing the resource. Whenever if you want to access any REST resource, okay, then we have to follow that URL here. By using the below URL, we can invoke the REST services. By using the below URL, we can invoke the REST services. Okay, now in this case, the URL is the syntax. We can specify HTTPS, okay, HTTPS, your server number or the instance number, salesforce.com/services/AppExRest/ your resource name, user resource name. For example, our resource can be accessible like this: HTTPS, like some AP15 salesforce.com/services/AppExRest. What is my service name? My service name is Case Manager Service. Okay, Case Manager Service. So this is the way we can able to access your resource. Okay, this is the endpoint URL. Okay, this is called as endpoint URL here. This is the resource name. That is, it is called as the URL mapping. That means here this is the URL. That means here inside that URL, how they can able to access that here. Now we have to specify this is the URL where exactly they can able to access my resource. This is the endpoint, nothing but the URL of my web service which can be consumed by the third-party applications. Then how can we invoke that REST resources here? Now we can invoke or test the REST web services by using the various tools. Like as for example, we can use Workbench tool. We can use the Workbench tool or the Postman tool. Or the third one, we can use HPQTP tool, like that. Along with that, we can able to invoke from your Apex classes also through Apex classes. Okay, that means through Apex programming also we can able to invoke that here. Through Apex programming also we can invoke. Fifth one, by using third-party applications. By using third-party applications also, and by using integration tools also. By using integration tools also, multiple ways are available in order to consume a service. Okay, clear? Now let's see how to prepare a REST service. How can we test it? Okay, now let's see practically in this case. Done with this? Now take a small use case. Create a REST service which is used to access all the account records exist in the object. Which is used to access all the account records exist in the object. Whatever the account records are available inside my object, all those account records I would like to access. How can we write this web service and how can we test it by using workbench tool? We'll see practically. Done? No. So now let me go to that practical part here. Now tell me what needs to be done for this one. Whenever if you want to prepare any service, then what we can do? We need to prepare a class. Okay. Now I'm indicating that account service or accounts manager service, whatever, anything. Accounts service. I'm creating a service with the name, okay, accounts service. So now I have prepared this class here. Now what is the next step? Make that class as global. Okay, make that class as global. Now this class can be accessible from the outside of my organization also by the Salesforce resources. But now this class I want to make it available to that all the third-party applications. Then what we can do? At the rate REST resource, where we can specify that on top of that class here. Okay, now before that class we have to specify at the rate REST resource. Okay, in that one we are having a parameter. What is that parameter? URL mapping. Okay, URL mapping equals to, we can specify based on what resource name they can able to access your service. I'm indicating / accounts manager service / star. I'm indicating that. Okay, so now here I'm indicating that. So now accounts manager service, this is the service name, this is the resource name which they can able to access. But internally, what is the class name? Accounts service. But the third party people doesn't know my actual class name, just they know the resource name, that's it. I'm not disclosing the internal data because that is very confidential to me. What methods I have defined, what classes I have defined, what is the return type of that method, what business logic I have written, I'm not disclosing anything. Simply I'm giving a URL. Boss, I have prepared one URL here. I have prepared one REST web service. So now this is the URL. Just you can use this URL, consumer service. Internally, what class it is referring, what methods it is referring, the people doesn't know here. Just I'm giving that resource, nothing but URL, that's it. With that URL, they can able to consume my data also here. Okay, they don't know how we have implemented, what architecture I have followed, what tables I'm using. They don't know all these things. That is not needed for those people also. Just they need some functionality. So I'm giving the functionality to it, that's it. How I have implemented, you no need to aware of that one. So for that one, I'm not disclosing the whole, the backend process, okay, which I have followed. So for that reason, simply I'm going to be preparing the class, and then that class I'm exposing to the third-party applications by giving a resource name. So this is the resource name which they would like to use to access your service. Okay, now in this case, sir, what you want to do now? I want to collect all the account records over here. Now tell me, how can we get all those account records? What is the method we need to prepare? Global method. Okay, because this method is accessing by the third-party application, so that make that method as global. Now global static method. Next, now here I would like to give that method name. Okay, now like as get all accounts. Okay, get all accounts. Now here in this case here, we need to specify the return type. What is the return type we need to specify now? List collection. List of what? Account, because I'm returning all the account records which I'm collecting from my object here. Okay, now so in this case here, now how can we collect all these account records now? By making what? SQL query. That's it, simple. List of account, lst accounts equals to, I'm going to be writing that SQL query. Select ID, name, rating, industry, annual revenue, phone, fax, active status from account. I'm collecting all the account records over here. Now what I need to do, I need to return this record because the return type I have mentioned as list of account. So just you have to return this list of account over here. So now here I'm returning that return list accounts. Okay. Now, so now what this method will do, basically, this method is used to get the records available inside that. So whenever the third-party application want to invoke this method, how can we make this method over here? We have to make that method with the help of an annotation. What is that annotation? HTTP get. Okay, HTTP get. So now here I'm indicating that method here. So now this is the method which we have prepared. So now this is a global method because this method is accessing by the third-party applications. Now this method should be always a starting method which doesn't request any object creation. And then which is returning that list of account records. The method name is get all accounts. Okay, get all accounts. Now, in this case, here I'm going to be writing that SQL query inside that in order to collect all the account records. Once the records has been returned by the SQL query, I'm storing inside my collection. That collection I'm returning over here. This collection is of type list of accounts, so that here I'm going to be returning that list of account. Okay. Now, whenever the third-party applications are accessing my resource, at that time they can able to use that URL, whatever I have given, based on the resource name. Along with that, they can able to invoke this method just by using that HTTP get method. That's it. They no need to aware of my method name. They no need to aware of my class name. Just by using that get method, they can able to invoke that here. That's it. Over. Now tell me any difficulty upon preparing this class and methods. No, right? No. So in this case, web services or integrations are not typical. These are very, very easy to implement. If you know Apex programming perfectly, okay, integration is very, very simple. Okay, it's not difficult. It's very easy for you. Here also we are using same class, same method, same SQL, same DML, nothing else. Same concept. Okay, so that Apex programming and the Visualforce programming are the base. Okay, if you know these things, then remaining will be very, very easy for you. Okay. Clear? Now let's see how can we test it one here. Okay, how to test this service. Now I would like to use that workbench tool. Let me go to the workbench tool. I'm using that workbench.developerforce.com. Okay, workbench.developerforce.com. So now it is asking you to select the environment. What type of environment you would like to connect? So now I'm connecting to what? My developer edition. Developer edition is what? Is it a production or is it a sandbox? Production, because it is starting with EAP servers. Okay. Now, so select that here. Or else if you want to connect to the sandbox, then you can select the option sandbox. Okay. Now, so now you would like to select that here. I would like to select the terms and conditions option. Click on login with Salesforce. Now, when coming to that, the workbench tool directly can't connect to your Salesforce instance. So for that, it is making a request to that Salesforce. So boss, I want to connect you because to access some data. So you want me to allow or not? So now I would like to allow over here. Click on allow. So once you click on allow, then Salesforce will grant the permission to the workbench so that it can able to connect to the Salesforce and it can able to get some data, whatever they want. Okay. Now, in this case, this is the workbench tool basic user interface. Okay, this is the workbench tool basic user interface. This is the starting user interface we are having. Okay, it's a home page of that application. Now I want to access that REST resources, nothing but REST web services I would like to test. For that one, go to that option here. Go to that option, utilities. Okay, utilities. Here we have an option called as REST Explorer. Okay, by using this REST Explorer option, we can able to access that REST resources for the testing purpose. Okay, for the testing purpose. Now click on REST Explorer here. Now it is indicating. Okay, now it is indicating that path to you. Okay, now it is indicating the path. Now, so we can able to specify that information. Okay, we can specify that information here. Now it is providing the various methods to you: get method, post method, put method, patch method, delete method. These are the various methods which will be supporting by the HTTP protocol over here. Okay. Now it is indicating choose an HTTP method to perform on the REST API service URI below here. Okay. So now whenever you are going to be accessing the REST resource, we can specify that URI also here. Okay. The URI, nothing but whatever that resource path, we can specify that here. Okay. Specify the resource path, and then in this resource path, for example, I'm indicating this is the resource path over here. Okay. This is the resource path. In this resource path, nothing but this is the resource name. What is my resource name? Case manager service. For example, here I'm having that service name as resource name as accounts manager service. But in this case here, what method you want me to invoke? HTTP get method or post method or patch method or what? Here I have prepared that get method over here. Now I want to invoke this, so that select the method here from these methods: get, post, put, patch, delete. These are the methods are available here. Okay. Now in this case, I would like to access my resource. How can we access the resource? Now let's see. Whenever if you want to access that resource, specify that your base URL here. Up to this is called as Salesforce base URL. Okay, ap15.salesforce.com. Now, from my Workbench tool, already I have connected to that Salesforce. Okay, already I have connected to the Salesforce. This is my username here. Okay, this is my username. Training.batch87@cis.com. Instance says ap15.salesforce.com. That means base URL is already available over here. So no need to specify the base URL upon testing inside that Workbench tool. Now my organization ID. This is the organization ID here. Okay, and then user ID. Whole information will be passing by that Workbench tool to that third party, to that Salesforce, which will be tracking your information, which will validate your credentials here. Okay, now it is tracking your organization ID and the user ID also, everything. So now you would like to access that resource. So now specify that. How can we access the resource now? /services. Up to that AP for 15.salesforce.com, we no need to specify. That is already available over here. Okay, now. So now /services, and then Apex REST and / next one, resource name. What is the resource name here? My resource name is accounts manager service here. Okay, now specify that resource name. Okay, now what is the method we need to select from this one? Get method, because here we have implemented that resource by having that get method, HTTP get method here. We no need to specify, we no need to refer any class name, method name, nothing. Just you have to specify that get method over here. This is the get annotated method will be getting executed. So whatever the method we have selected get, that means it will go to this particular resource. In that resource, whatever the method is available, which will be having the HTTP get annotation, that method will be executing automatically by default to you here. No need to specify your actual method name like as get all accounts. Just you can specify that HTTP method, which will be referencing to the HTTP get annotated method. This method will be getting executed automatically. That's what I told you. When coming to a class, when coming to a web service, you can have only one method which is having HTTP get annotation over here, not two methods. Okay, clear? Now, so now let's execute that service right now. Click on execute. So once you click on this execute button, it will be executing that here. Accounts manager service. Okay, accounts manager service here. So now we have specified that REST resource. Accounts manager service. Apex REST, and then I'm indicating accounts manager service. Now, so let me check here. Login IP ranges, let me specify the universal IP address. Skill method not allowed. It's not required to specify. Now, let's see. So now here in this case here, okay, I have specified with that braces here, HTTP GET method. Okay, now. So in this case, whenever I'm going to be invoking this service, accounts manager service, so now whatever the records are available inside my account object, all the records have been getting returns to you over here. So now because here when coming to my account object here, whatever the records are available, I'm collecting all those records. Okay, I'm collecting all those account records available inside my account object. I'm going to be returning over here. So those records you can able to collect, okay, which will be returning by my resource. Now the third party people can able to consume this request, and then their response they can able to store this data inside their application also. Okay. So in this case, whenever we are going to be testing that the REST web services, we can use this workbench tool. So we can specify that base URL we no need to specify. But whenever you are accessing this resource from your third-party system, compulsorily we have to give the complete URL. Okay, we have to pass that complete URL. We have to pass from a third-party application. But this tool is already connected to my Salesforce application. That's what here we no need to specify the base URL. Up to salesforce.com we no need to specify. From there onwards we have to specify services/apex rest and then your resource name. Now in this resource name here, which will be indicating that we can see that whole data. Okay, now yes to yes, share account one, nothing but Salesforce to Salesforce integration. We did that at that time. We have shared that record here. This is the record information, ID of the record, name, rating value, industry, phone number, fax number, active status, everything. We are having that Edge communications record. This is the ID details of that record. We are having Ginny Pint record. This is the details of the record. Sundar Kumar, this is the details of that record. Here, like that, all the records information we can able to collect here with the help of by accessing that resource which has been exposed by the provider people. Okay. Now it is showing this information. But when you go to the third-party application, how they are getting this information here? This data will be getting represented in the form of a JSON format. Okay, in the form of JSON format. For that one, how can we see that JSON format here? Whenever if you want to see that JSON format here on top of this response, you will be having that show raw response. Okay, show raw response. Now once you click on this show raw response, you can able to see. So this is the response format here, okay, which has been prepared by the Salesforce. So now this is the data here, which will be in the form of JSON format. Okay, which will be in the form of JSON format here. Now let me copy this one. Let me show you the data. So which will be returning in the form of the JSON format. Okay. So now it is indicating that here. So now this braces is called as array. Okay, this is called as an array. In that array, okay, they are going to be exposing that information. So now this is the first record here. Okay, this is the first account record. These are the details of that record here. The type of this record is account record, which has been accessible with the help of this one here. A subjects account, and this is that information. See, so that already we have discussed that here. Whenever if you want to access any resources, then you can specify the resource name along with that particular record. Also, if you want to access a particular record, we can specify the record ID also. Like in the last session, I told you over there. Whenever if you want to access this employee information, we can able to specify sample.com/employees. If you want to access one specific employee, then you can go to that employees / that particular employee ID which you would like to access. Like the similar way, if you want to access that complete account record, simply you can specify account. If you want to access one specific record, then we have to specify that record ID here. So now this is the record details here. This is the key, this is the value. This is the key and this is the value. This is purely in the form of map format here. Key and the value page. Now this is the first record information. Up to this is first record. And this is the second record information. And this is the third record information. Like that, all the records information has been getting written to in the form of JSON format here. How to convert this JSON format of data into our Apex type, we'll see in the JSON concept in tomorrow's session. Okay. How to path this JSON to our own type, how to convert our own type to JSON format, we'll see both serialization, deserialization process here. Through programming, through manual, both we'll see here. Okay. Now, so which will be giving the response in the form of JSON format. So now this JSON response will be collecting by the third-party people and they can able to process the data over there. Okay, clear? Understood the concept here? How can we prepare this resource? How to test the resource? Sorry? Particular record in the sense? Restricting means what?
We don't want to display the sum of the account records.
So at that time here, we can able to fetch only that required record by using SQL query. Whatever the records you don't want to expose, just you can restrict that. Okay, just you can restrict that here. That possibility is available to you. Restrict in the sense what? Whenever I'm going to be collecting the records by using SQL query, don't fetch all. Okay, don't fetch all those records here. Fetch only some specific records by adding the proper conditions inside your SQL query here. Okay. Clear? Up to this one? Now. So I'm indicating the method also. HTTP method is okay. Clear? Now, so write a small code here. Write a small service. Use case. Create a REST service to expose all the hiring manager records. All the hiring manager records whose location is Hyderabad. Whose location is Hyderabad. I want to expose only those hiring manager records whose location is Hyderabad. How can we do that? Then, in this case, so now I'm preparing one more service here. I'm preparing another class, hiring manager service. Now I'm making that class as global. I'm indicating @REST resource. I'm indicating that URL mapping. URL mapping equals to, we can specify hiring manager resource service /star. Here I'm preparing that method, HTTP get method. I'm preparing the method the global static list of hiring manager. Okay, list of hiring manager, get all or get Hyderabad HR records. Okay, get Hyderabad HR records. So now here I'm going to be indicating that list of hiring manager, LST HR records equals to, I'm fetching the data. Select ID of the hiring manager, name, location value, contact number, email ID from hiring manager, where location __ C equals to Hyderabad. Once the records are available, then I would like to return those records. Return LST HR records. I'm returning those records here. Okay, now my service is ready. So now we have prepared a global class which we are going to be used to collect all the Hyderabad HR records information which I'm going to be exposing to the third party application. Okay, so now here in this case, so now I'm going to be collecting all the Hyderabad HR records information. I'm returning those records to the third party system. Okay, so let me test this functionality here. Go to that workbench tool, specify that resource name, click on execute. So whatever the records are available, okay, inside my hiring manager object whose location is equals to Hyderabad, only those records will be getting returns to me. So we are having 4 records are available which are returning over here. Amit Dhal, so he is one of the HR person, location is Hyderabad, these are the contact details. Sachin Pandey, these are the details here, location is Hyderabad. Murali Krishna, he is also one of the HR person from Hyderabad location. Shankar Prasad, he is also from Hyderabad location. These are the 4 HR records are available inside my object, okay, which are having that location values as Hyderabad, so that it will be returning only those records over here. Okay, clear? How to get only that required information? Now here you can raise a question. Sir, for example, here we are collecting Hyderabad positions only, but sometimes I will pass a record ID at runtime. Based on that record ID, I want that record information here. Okay, I will pass one record ID at runtime. Based on that record ID, I would like to get that record information. At that time, we can pass some values also. As of now, what we did, simply we are exposing that service, collecting the data, that's it. But sometimes I don't want whole. I will pass some input, I will pass some record ID as a parameter at runtime to my web service. Based on that input, my web service has to return only that specific records to me. Sometimes I will pass my account record rating value. If I'm passing the rating value, based on that rating, whatever the records are available, it has to return only those records to me. As of now, what we did, one-way communication. Simply we are invoking that service, it is giving the records, I'm consuming that. But sometimes I don't want to do like that. I will pass some input here. Based on that input, it has to search for the records, it has to return those records to me. Then how can we supply the input to your web service? We'll see practically now here. Okay. Understood the concept here? As of now, simply we are collecting whole data. But now I want to pass some input also. Not only getting the response, I would like to give some request also. That means I'm passing some input. Based on that input, I would like to get the respective records from my object here with the help of that web service. Now, so let me copy this one. Okay, clear? Now, as of now, we are collecting the data from the service. Simply, we are invoking that service. Service is going to be returning those records information to me. I'm collecting the data. I'm doing some processing. But sometimes I would like to give some input, and based on that input, I would like to get some response. So in this case, whenever if you want to supply some input to your web service, then we have to use a class called as REST context class. We have to use a class called as REST context class. So as part of this REST context class, REST context is nothing but which is going to be defining the context where the user, the consumer can send some input values, and then the provider can able to give the response also. Okay. So in order to send the request and then to get the response, whatever the features are required, all are available as part of this REST context class. REST context class is going to be providing all the functionalities which is used to make a request to the service by passing some input values, and based on the input we can able to get the required response also. So in this case, as part of this REST context class, you will be having the two classes internally available by default here. Okay, two classes are available internally by default. The first one is the REST request class, and the second one is the REST response class. Okay, REST request and the REST response. These are the two classes are available internally inside my REST context class. Inside my REST context class, we are having two classes are available: REST request and then REST response. So REST request is used to pass the request to that web service. REST response is used to get the response from that web service. In order to pass the input values, in order to make a request by passing some input values at runtime, we are using the REST request. We can make a request to the web service here, so that upon making the request, we can pass some input parameters also. But upon passing the input parameters, REST request is going to storing the input parameters in the form of the map collection by default here. It will be storing in the form of key and the value pair. It will be storing in the form of key and the value pair here. Okay, key will be nothing but your variable name, and then value is nothing but actual value which you are supplying to the parameter here. Your parameter name is nothing but the key, the value is nothing but your actual parameter value over here which you are supplying. Okay, so in this case, whenever if you want to send some input values to that web service, we have to use the help of REST context class. Okay, REST context class, based on that we can able to supply the request input parameters, and we can get the response also from that web service also here. Okay, clear? Now, so in this case, make a note over here, REST context class. This class defines a communication context through which the consumer can connect to the provider and they can get the response from the provider. They can get the response from the provider. It is providing a communication channel or communication context through which the consumer can connect to the provider and they can get the response from the provider. Now, it contains two inner classes. First one is REST request class. This class is used to make a request to the REST service and we can supply the required input parameters to the service, and we can supply the required input parameters. And we can supply the required input parameters to the service. Now, make a note. To store the input parameters in the form of key value pair collection. Where key is the parameter name and the value is the parameter input value. Okay, the value is the parameter input value. For example, the key and the value. I'm passing that ID. For example, if I'm passing ID, it will be holding that ID value. If I'm passing the name, it will be including like some test account. And then rating. Heart. Annual revenue. It will be holding the value, some value. Like that. It will be holding the key in the value pair collection. Okay. Now it will be storing the whole information, nothing but whatever the input parameters you are going to be supplying to that web service. This will be storing in the form of a key value pair collection like Azure map. Then where it will store? How can we collect it from here? Okay. Now in this case, all these input parameters will be storing inside a property called as params property. Okay. Params is a property, nothing but parameters. Okay. Then the property name is params property here. Property. Inside this class, we have a property called as params property. This property will store all the input parameters supplied by the consumer to the web service. Whatever the input parameters the consumer has supplied at runtime, that will be storing inside that params property here. Which will store all the input values in the form of a map collection. Okay, in the form of a map collection. Then how can we access this one? Now let's see the syntax. Now we can access this one by using that REST context dot request dot params. Okay, REST context. Inside that REST context, I'm having that REST request class, that class object I'm accessing over here, and then through that one I'm going to be accessing the params, which will be returning that all the input parameters in the form of a map collection, map of string comma string. Key is also of type string, value is also of type string here. Okay, input values. Now the object name. For example, we can define map of string comma string. Now map input values equals to, we can specify that REST context dot request dot params. Params is a property inside the REST request class which is used to hold all the input parameters. Whatever the input parameters the end user or the consumer has supplied to the third-party application, all those input parameters will be storing inside this the params property here. Whenever if you're withdrawing the money by using that ICICI Bank ATM card from the Axis Bank ATM, okay, from the Axis Bank ATM. At that time, whenever I'm swiping that card, now the machine is going to be reading your card details, your card number, validity, okay, expiration, everything will be reading that information from the card, and then it is going to be collecting that whole input parameters. Nothing but the card number, card validity information. It is collecting that information. Along with that, whatever the, if it is a EMV chip card is available, from that chip it is reading your card details over here, the whole information, and then that information is storing in the form of a, like as a input parameters. These input parameters are going to be sending to that the ICICI Bank application. Now the ICICI Bank application will receive these input parameters here with the help of that REST context dot request dot params. In these parameters, it will be holding that, like as a card number values available, expiration, validity, expiration date will be available. The name on the card, it will be allocating that. Based on this value, it will go to the respective database. It will collect the whole information. It will be sending this whole record information to the Axis Bank application. Now the Axis Bank application will verify whether this person's account is in active status or not. It will verify that information. It will check that sufficient funds are available or not. Then only it is giving that message to you. So now we can able to send out money here. Suppose if that amount is not available, sufficient funds are not available, giving the message over here, so insufficient funds are available, so we can't give that money to you. So that here, whatever the card they have read, that whole information will be sending to the ICICI Bank application, and then it will be returning the whole information of your record here, so that both the applications can communicate with each other. Axis Bank application and the ICICI Bank application both can communicate with each other with the help of that web services here. Okay. Now, whenever we are going to be transferring the money also, at that time, that is also nothing but a web service. Through that payment gateway is nothing but a payment web service, nothing else. Okay, clear? Now, the second one. The second class is the REST response class. REST response class. In this case, so this class is used to, okay, this class is used to, okay, this class is used to collect the response from the web service. Okay, from the web service. In order to get that response, we are using that REST response class. REST request class is used to make a request to the web service by supplying some input parameters. REST response class is used to collect that response from that web service. We can make a request, we can get that response also. Now this entire context will be managing by the REST context class. In the REST context class, you will be having these two inner classes, REST request class, REST response class. Both are available to you. Okay, clear? Now, so now let's see how can we use this REST context classes in order to make a request to get only some specific records. I don't want all records from my account object here. As of now, whatever the services we have implemented, now this service is returning all the records from my account object. This service is returning all the Hyderabad accounts here. But sometimes I want Bangalore accounts here. Bangalore hiring managers, then what we can do? Do we need to write one more service here by specifying where the location equals to Bangalore? No, I don't want to write that. I want to write the method only one, but this value location name I want to pass at runtime, okay, and the form of input parameters. How to supply that input parameters? Now let's see practically in this case. Okay. Now, so now here in this case, how can we implement that? Okay, web service which will be collecting that input from the end user and how it is going to processing. We'll see practically now. Okay. Now. So let's make a note over here. A small use case. Create a web service to fetch only the required case details based on the specified case ID. Based on the specified case record ID. Based on that specified case record ID. That means here as of now simply we are invoking the service just by using the URL, but not only invoking the service, I want to pass an input also now. How to pass the input? Okay, now let's see practically. Based on that input, I would like to get only that particular record information. Okay, now for example here, you know the concept of Visual Force. In that Visual Force, we have discussed about a concept called as page redirection. How to redirect the user from one page to another page. Upon redirecting the user from one page to another page, can we supply some values also or not? How? Query string. That's it. Here also, nothing else. Okay. Here also we have to follow the same format. Okay. So whatever the resource you are accessing right now, in this case, specify that resource and then make a question mark over here. Specify that ID parameter, supply the ID value here. That's it. Like as a query string format only, nothing different. Okay. Now, whatever the value which are supplied, this is that parameter name and this is the value. This will be storing inside that params property here. Okay, which will be storing in the form of map collection. So now this is the key and this is the value here. So now from that map collection, collect this particular value based on this key, and then we can able to write the query, return the data. That's it, nothing else. Okay. Now let's see how can we implement that. Now let's see practically in this case. So now I want to implement a service in order to get only that specific case information based on that case number. So the case ID, case record ID here. Based on that case record ID, I would like to get only that case record information. Now let me prepare a class here. Case manager service. Now I'm indicating that REST resource URL mapping equals to, we can specify case service star. So now here I'm going to be preparing a method, a global method, global static. It has to return only that case record. How many records I'm returning based on the case record ID? How many records you want to return? Only one. So the return type I'm mentioning like a simply case. I'm not using list collection because with one ID will be having only one case record here. So I'm returning that only one. Now after that, I want to get case record by ID. Okay. Now I'm making this method as HTTP get method. Okay, I'm making this method as HTTP get method. Now, so now tell me whatever the case record ID that you are supplying to this particular web service, okay, at runtime as an input, where that will be storing here. Whenever the third party person, that means whenever I'm going to be making this request. So this is the request here. Now inside this request, it will be having the parameter values also. So that here, the center request information will be storing inside that REST request class. Okay, REST request class. So that here, we need to collect the REST request class, and then we have to get the params property. From that params property, we can collect that whole information. Now the REST request class is available where? Inside that REST context. Okay, inside that REST context. Like for example, when you go to that Google also, when you verify that REST context class. When you go to the REST context class, they're clearly indicating that REST context will be holding the REST request and REST response objects available inside that. It contains the REST request and REST response objects internally inside that. So these will be available in the form of that classes to you over here. Okay, these will be available in the form of classes to you. Okay, now for the REST request, you will be having a separate class. You are having the REST request class separately, REST response class separately. When you go to the REST request class, you can able to specify. It represents an object used to pass data, okay, from an HTTP request to an Apex RESTful web service method. In order to pass some input parameters or the request to that web service, we are using that REST request class here. Okay. Now, whatever the parameters you are going to supply, that will be storing inside that params property. Now, whenever if you are using the REST response class, REST response class, nothing but it represents an object used to pass data from an Apex RESTful web service method to an HTTP response. Nothing but to get the response from that web service to your consumer, we are using the REST response class. Okay. Now, so these are the two inner classes are available here. Okay. Now we are using those classes now. So let's go to that. I would like to connect that the input parameter here, like as the REST context dot request dot params. So now it is going to be returning that all the input parameters. What are the parameters you have supplied? Those parameters will be returning in the form of a map collection. Map of string comma string. Map cases. Okay. Map cases. Or else map case input. Okay, map case input. So in this case, what will happen now? I'm passing one ID parameter. ID equals to, I'm passing some case record ID here. Now that will be storing where inside my params property here. What is the key name? ID. What is the value? That case record ID will be available. How can we get the value? Because to get the case record, we need the case record ID, right? Case record ID will be storing where? In the keys place or in the values place? Keys place or values place? Values place. Now key will be nothing but your parameter name. Okay, key is nothing but parameter name. Value is nothing but what? Your actual input parameter value which you have supplied, case record ID. Like for example, whenever I'm going to be invoking this service, I'm passing that ID over here. Slash ID, case record ID. ID equals to, I'm passing that 500 some value here. This is the case record ID here. Now tell me which one is key, which one is value now. So now this ID, this is the key and this is the value. So now here I want this value because to get the case record, what we require? We require that case record ID. How can we get this case record ID? By passing that key here. Okay, we need to pass that key. Okay, now in this case, I would like to verify that here. I'm going to be collecting that information. Case record equals to, I'm collecting the case information. Select ID of the case record, case number, type of the case, status of the case, reason of the case, origin of the case, subject of the case, from case object. Where what we can do? ID parameter into supply. How can we specify that one? ID equals to map case input dot key set. Key set or what? I don't want to supply the key set over here. I want to collect that ID value. Then we have to use get. What is the parameter name here? ID here. That's it. Based on this ID, we can able to collect that case record here. Now that case record, I'm going to be returning over here. I'm returning that case record. Okay, observe this one here. So you know this concept. These are nothing different. Okay, these are already you know everything. You know that here. Okay. But previously, we are passing the parameters to the method directly, but we are going to passing in the form of a request that will be storing inside that the request class, REST request class inside the params property. That's it, nothing else. Okay, so now whatever the input parameters we have supplied, all those input parameters will be storing inside the params property of your REST request class. And from there, I'm collecting that all the keys and the values, and I'm storing inside a map collection by defining the key will be of type string, value will be of also of type string. Okay, now, and then based on that values, I'm going to be collecting the respective case record from my case object. I'm returning that case record here. Okay. Clear? Now. So now here in this case here. So let me test this service. I'm supplying that case record ID. Let me take any of the record ID. I'm collecting that case record ID over here. Take this case. Now performance inadequate for second consecutive. I'm collecting that case record ID. I'm passing this. Okay, I'm passing this case record ID here. So it may be 15 characters, 18 characters you can supply. Whenever I'm passing this case record ID, now this ID parameter name, this is the ID is a parameter name. This will be storing inside that keys place. Okay, this is a parameter value. This actual record ID will be storing inside that value space. So I'm collecting the value based on the key. How can we collect the key? The parameter name is what? ID. Okay, I'm going to be passing that ID parameter. Based on this ID parameter, I'm collecting the value. Based on that value, I'm mapping the condition. I'm getting that respective case record. I'm returning the case record. Okay. So let me execute that. Session has been expired. What is that service name? Case service slash ID equals to, what is the case ID? I'm passing the case ID. Click on execute. Now it is giving only that particular case record information. No need to fetch all the cases information. Whatever the ID we have supplied, only that particular case record information we can able to collect that information. So this is the ID of that case. This is the case number. Tape is electrical. Status is closed. Reason is performance issue. Origin is phone. It is indicating performance inadequate for the second consecutive week. Suppose if you want to return that description also, the case description also, then we can able to include that here. Okay, subject comma description. Okay, description also we can include. Now let me invoke this service now. Click on execute. So now you will be able to get that subject and the description also. But when coming to my case, might be the description may be empty. See, there is no description field value. Okay, this is empty. That's what is not showing anything. For example, let me pass a different case which is having some description also. For my case, I'm having the subject and description, everything. Let me pass this particular one. My case is what? My tab device is unable to connect to the mobile network. Now, let me supply. Click on execute. Now we can able to fetch the information of that case record. Here the details of the case record, and then we can able to see the subject and the description and everything over here. Depends upon your requirement, we can able to pass some input parameter also. We can able to fetch the data inside this. Okay, clear? Understood the concept here now? Here we can specify your case ID. Okay, case record ID here. Let me place this one also. Clear? Now, write one more service here. Create a web service to fetch all the account records based on the specified industry name. Okay, create a web service to fetch all the account records based on the specified industry name. How can we implement this one now? Here what parameter we need to supply now? Industry parameter. Okay, that's it. Now, so let me go to that implementation. For this account service, I'm removing this one. Okay, I'm removing that code. I'm preparing that method. HTTP get. I'm preparing that method here. Global static list of account get accounts by industry name. Get accounts by industry name. First of all, what we need to do? Whatever the input parameter has been supplied by that user or the consumer at runtime, we need to collect that input parameter. How can we collect that input parameter? By using rest context dot request dot params, which will be returning the result in the form of what? Map collection. Map of string comma string. Now map industry. Okay, map industry. So in this case here, whatever the input parameter we have supplied, that will be storing inside this map collection, where the parameter name will be storing inside this, the key and the parameter value will be storing inside that values place here. Now I would like to collect that industry name. So here, if you want to include one more step, then you can do that also. I will give you that one. String industry name equals to, how can we collect that? Map industry dot get of parameter name. What is the parameter name? Industry. Then you will be getting the industry name value inside this one. Now you can use this variable to map the condition over there. You can also include this particular statement also over there. Depends upon your requirement here. Whatever the way you feel comfortable, we can use that here. Okay. So now here I'm going to be indicating this. Based on this industry name, I would like to collect all the account records. List of account. Okay. Now, ACC records equals to, I'm fetching that. Select the ID of that account record, name, rating value, industry, annual revenue, phone, fax, website, and the active status from account, where industry equals to what we can do, industry name parameter, and then I want to arrange the records in the alphabetical order, so that I'm using order by name, and then return those records, return SAC records. Okay, now tell me, preparing web services is difficult or easy? Is it difficult? Since long time we are doing the same thing, right? SQL query and your class method, nothing else. Just we have added 2 lines, that's it. Okay, one is REST resource, second one is HTTP GET, nothing else. Okay, web services also nothing but simply classes. Okay, nothing else. Those are classes which contain some business logic, but normal class we are accessing within the application. Web services can be accessible from the third party applications also. Okay, but it will be following some different standards internally. Clear? Now let's see how can we test this service now. So I'm going to be testing that service by passing that parameter name. Parameter name I'm indicating like as industry equals to, I'm indicating that simply banking. Whenever I'm passing that value banking, with that banking industry, whatever the records are available, it has to return all those records to me. Click on execute. It has to return all these account records which are having that industry value equals to banking. With the industry banking, we have 2 records are available, 2 accounts. Bharadwaj Kumar, this is the account record, industry value banking. Second one, Sundar Kumar, industry value equals to banking. Suppose, for example, I'm giving that industry as some energy. Click on execute. Now it has to return. It is returning the 3 records over here. United Island Gas Corporation, energy industry. United Island Gas Singapore, that is also energy industry. United Island Gas UK, this is also having industry energy here. Okay, these are the 3 records. For example, I'm passing that value education. Industry equals to education. So only that education industry account will be getting visible to you, like as the University of Arizona, which is having that industry as education. Like that depends upon the industry which was supplied, we can able to send this information. Okay, you can get that response based on the input parameters here. Clear? Clear? So this is the way we can able to use that HTTP GET method. In order to get the required information, we can collect all the records. We can collect the specific records also. Depends upon your input parameters here. Okay. Then how to perform the remaining operations as part of the web service, like as how to perform the post method and then put method, patch method, delete method. We'll see in tomorrow's session. In tomorrow's session, we'll see these remaining methods here because it won't take much time. Because here to discuss about the fundamental things, it will be taking more time. And then from here, you know how to implement everything here. Just we are using the delete statement over here, upsert statement over here, and then update statement, insert statement. That's it, nothing else. Okay, how to use that we'll see practically, and then we'll see the concept of JSON parser also. Okay, and then one more thing, I would like to let you know.
Will now be recorded.
Okay. So in the last session, we have discussed about the web services and the various principles has to be get followed by each web service, and what are the various types of web services are available in Salesforce, and what exactly the REST-based web service, what exactly the SOAP-based web service. Okay, so now whenever we are implementing the web services, typically you will be having two components. One is a provider, second one is consumer. Okay, as part of web services, you will be having the two components. One is the provider, second one is the consumer. Provider means like as a server, which will be having the actual business logic, data, functionalities will be getting available, which is going to be providing the resources to that various clients. So when coming to the consumer, consumer is nothing but a client, which is going to be connecting to the provider, and they're collecting the required resources. They're accessing the required resources. Okay, like as a client and the server. That client is nothing but the consumer, which will be consuming the services. Consumer is nothing but accessing the resources which are available at the provider's place. So whatever the resources are available, whatever the web services are available at the provider's place, that can be consumed by the consumer or the client. So now in this case, how can we prepare our own web services as part of Salesforce instance? Okay, now let's see practically. So now whenever we are preparing the REST-based web services, whenever we are preparing that REST-based web services, because almost 99% of the people are going to be implementing that REST-based web services, because these can be very easy to access. These can be accessible by any client. That client may be a desktop application, or it may be a web application, it may be a cloud, it may be a mobile applications also. Okay, so most of the mobile applications are utilizing the REST-based web services. Okay, so now in this case, so parsing the data in the REST-based web service is very easy when compared with that the SOAP-based, because SOAP-based in the sense we have to use purely the XML format. But when you go to the REST-based web services, these are going to be exposing the data to you in the form of either JSON format or XML or text, whatever the way that you want, we can able to expose. So now JSON is very lightweight. Okay, JSON is a very lightweight programming which is used to parse the data very easily, to synchronize, to because to serialize the data and to deserialize the data by using JSON. We are having so many ready-made classes and the methods are available. It is very easy to parse that information, so that you can go with any web service, whatever we have. Okay, most of the web services are purely built upon REST-based implementations, so that parsing that response or passing the input also very easy when compared with that XML format. Okay, now, so in this case, how can we prepare our own REST-based web services? Whenever we are going to preparing the REST-based web services that already we have discussed, in REST-based web services, each and every class or each and every object will be referred as a resource. Okay, everything will be a resource. Whatever the features you are accessing, each and every feature will be referred as a resource. The resource can be accessible with the help of an URI. Okay, the resource can be accessible with the help of an URI, where we need to specify the name of the resource. Based on the resource name, we can able to get that resource which is available at the provider's place. So in this case, how can we build our own REST-based web services in Salesforce? Whenever if you want to prepare the REST-based web services, we have to use the various annotations. Okay, we have to use various annotations. Okay, now we'll see what are the various annotations are available, okay, inside the REST-based web services. Okay, now, for example, implementing REST-based web services are very simple. It's not typical, it's very simple. Okay, now, For example, assume that here. Okay, assume that I'm preparing a normal class. Okay, I'm preparing a normal class. Public class, the class name, like as some accounts helper. Inside this class, I'm writing some business logic. I'm writing some business logic. So now tell me, this class can be accessible up to what level? Within that entire organization, because I made this class as public, so public classes can be accessible, okay, within the entire organization wherever you want. Okay, now sometimes I am defining this class as global. What do you mean by the global? Outside the organization also. Who can access this one? Salesforce resources, not the third-party applications. Third-party applications can't access this class, because you can raise a question, sir, you have made it as global, okay, so that this can be accessible from outside of the organization. But even though outside of the organization, only Salesforce resources can access that, like as Salesforce queues, batch classes. These are the various things can be accessible here. But the third-party applications can't access your class. If you want to make your class to be get accessible from a third-party application also, at that time we have to use an annotation called as REST resource. Okay, REST resource. That's it. Nothing else. Over. It's a web service which can be consumed by the third-party applications. Now, in this case, that already we have discussed, what are the things if you want to access, okay, there from the third-party application,